Hello there, and welcome back. Fire Mage or Arcane Mage? Both are meta, but what should we pick? It's hard, right?
It is very hard because Mage is eating very well this season, and Fire and Arcane have been duking it out.
They started with Fire at the
And
beginning.
it's finishing
Arcane
it up with Arcane right now, it
Arcane
seems.
creeped up. But yeah, no further ado. Let's just jump right into it and see how both of these mage specs are looking. By the way, quick caveat, Frost is also climbing up there.
Oh my
We're
God,
probably
yeah,
going to make a video about Frost as well in the future. But let's kick it off with Fire, because it was the first one to be like holding the reins of the meta in terms
Finally,
of like
after a season of not being meta, people have been craving when I'm gonna be meta for a 7th season in a row.
Yeah, it was way overdue, right?
Indeed.
Well, I guess like the biggest thing for Fire Mages is obviously the uncapped AoE. We can start with that because we have a lot of dungeons where big pulls are, I would say, optimal. Like, you have like you have Cinder Brew, you have a Floodgate, and I think of some other ones as well. So uncapped
Dark
AoE,
Flame,
Dark Flame. Uncapped AoE for Fire Mage is definitely a thing. But not only that, there's still, there's more specs that have uncapped AoE.
Sure.
Fire Mage also has
priority damage, and it always had it, and this was the reason why it was meta for a very long time before the War Within, since you had the concept of shooting your target with Pyroblast and then pressing Fire Blast and then spreading Ignite, and the AoE damage that our Fire Mage did for a long time was just through Ignite. Now, thankfully, it's a little bit more ethical, and you can do it through flame strikes and I guess living bomb to an extent, and that's usually why you want it. And you'll see a pattern with this, especially when you have specs like Balanced Druid and Unholy DK and even Elemental Shamans that just do crazy AoE but don't really do that.
Well, you have to think about the fact that these specs also have, well, not really Unholy DK, but Boomkin and Arcane do have a ramp. Fire Mage also has a ramp for the Ignite, but it's still like on demand. So, I need to have that burst, have that combustion. Let's just go. It's all good. As opposed to like Arcane, which does need his build up. We'll get to it. We'll talk about it. But again, this is one of the advantages of Frost.
Fire.
Arcane Mage.
It starts with
Fire
F.
Mage.
Yeah, listen, we go through all of them until we hit the right fucking one. And to your point, something that really needs to be said, especially when you do keys, when you push content higher, doesn't matter if it's like your 10 or if it's like your 14, the rotation is a little bit simpler and it's less restrictive than it is for Arcane, because we're going to get to that. And not having to have 17 conditions for your damage to come out definitely helps when, oh my god, I need to kick that one, oh, that mob needs to be knocked back a little bit, and things like that. And it definitely helps, since a mage, historically, especially Fire and Arcane, are terrible when you have to do things inside of your DPS window.
Exactly. We touched on this subject on our previous meta debate videos, where specs that have a simple enough rotation are much more efficient at delivering not only their most amounts of damage, but also dealing with mechanics, dodging stuff, and so on and so forth, right? So the fact that Fire Mage has its rotation much more on the easy part of things just makes it that much better and work to its advantage. There's also the fact that Fire Mage is quite more mobile than Arcane Mage.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And a lot of other specs. In terms of a caster, you can really like jump around all over the place and still deliver your damage, right? I wouldn't want to compare it to BM Hunter, but that's another example where a spec can do stuff while moving around and doing mechanics. It's not the same thing, but you know what I'm saying.
It is indeed an advantage that people can exploit, and definitely helps, because on the off chance when you don't have these pluses, these pros going for it, then you can be punished for your rotation. And if you take a spec like Arcane, and in its damage window, you have a pretty strict sequence of abilities that you have to do in about, 10 seconds whenever your damage is, because that's where most of your damage is going to come from. And if you stop that sequence to do, you will want to interrupt your targets, do a CC, but if you do that, you tank a lot of the damage, because the way, even for Fire, the way the damage scales for Mage is exponentially. Every global doesn't just add damage, it multiplies damage. So every global that doesn't multiply damage takes a lot of the damage out from, and that's why you would want one of these two specs.
Exactly. Also, Fire Mage, in terms of its like the defensives and tankiness, quote unquote, I guess it's like the only mage spec that has like a cheat death through cauterize. I mean, it's not the best out there, but it is a cheat death, and it goes a long way.
It might be the best cheat death because it actually heals you. It gives you that ridiculous movement speed. Sure, you take your damage away, but as opposed to like a rogue cheat death that just keeps you at low HP, you just have damage reduction, or DK cheat death, kind of like that. This is one of the better ones in the game. Since once it procs, everybody knows. You see that little rocket boost fire. Oh my god, I'm dying!
But it's still palatable. When you see a mage into Scatterize, as a healer, at least you say, oh my god, I have to save him fast, because you never know. And also, like, Fire Mage also has, like, super good boss damage, okay? Now, that is something that kind of goes into the territory of Arcane a little bit, which I guess we can move forward to. Arcane, in terms of its uncapped AoE, no, it's capped.
No, bueno, no.
So I guess we have to start with how do we frame this? So it does have high burst damage in low AoE.
Yeah, Arcane Barrage can only hit up to 5 targets because of Resonance or whatever the talent is. That just, for every Arcane charge that you have, Arcane Barrage hits another target. And you only have 4 charges, so, go do the math.
So let's put it like this. Like when you see, and we always going to give this example. So the first pull in Cinder Brew Midori, like when you see an Arcane Mage there and you have like all that big pull, and obviously there's going to be probably an Unholy Decay, probably. a Pumpkin. Arcane is not going to shine in that pool whatsoever.
Not in the way that people might think.
Yeah, well, okay, we can get into the specifics, all right? So if you took a damage breakdown of that pool and you look at the damage Arcane does to, like, I don't know, Chewy or the...
hired muscle.
The hired muscles, right? Arcane just melts those, and you have to melt those mobs. That's it.
Yeah, tell him, Mr. Healer. Tell them how it is.
Yeah, because god damn that AoE from Chewy, from the higher muscles. But regardless, Arcane is one of the, if not the best priority damage dealing spec out there. It just melts those. You don't see it on the damage meters when you look on a general footage or whatever. It's so valuable. You have no idea.
We might have some footage rolling around from some of the dungeons that I did, and I don't have the gear that some of the top Arcanes have, and we don't do the keys at that level. But whenever I get into like a Priory or a Cinder Brew and I pick my Knight or my hired muscle, that guy dies before the rest of the pack.
Yeah.
And that's real. Unless you're a healer, you don't really understand how important that is, because you look. This is one of those situations where, okay, overall damage is not the most important thing. Not having people die definitely helps.
Definitely the most important thing. And this is one of the biggest advantages right now when you're talking about Arcane versus Fire Mage. Fire Mage does have priority damage, but it cannot compete with Arcane. Like when Arcane locks in, and you also have to remember, Arcane is not the most mobile specs out there. It's pretty much a turret playstyle, as opposed to Fire Mage, right?
Yeah.
But if it lands, and if you stick him into the ground and he gets his ramp off and everything is like aligned, any priority target will die much faster than, let's say, when a Fire Mage focuses that priority damage. So that's a big advantage. Also, just keeping it in that lane, the boss damage. I mean, one place where you'll see Arcane Mage just rising above everybody else on the damage meters. Right.
That's true. I think we're looking at some of the top dungeons done by the big kahunas out there, and you had Arcanes and Unholies and probably balances in some fights, and you can probably see the breakdown here when it comes to boss damage. Arcane just like says, "See ya, bye, I'm gone, I'm there."
Yeah, it's basically the version where in big pulls you would have the Unholy Decays and the Balanced Druids. You just see ya. When it comes to boss damage, that's Arcane.
Nobody
100%.
can hold a candle to Arcane.
Exactly. And also, Fire does great in that department as well. But I feel like Arcane is one of the best in terms of like boss damage. Man, there's no.
You could probably call Arcane the specialist. So you would want either Fire or Arcane for almost the same reasons. Arcane just is more specialized. It will have less AoE damage than Fire, but more single target damage than Fire. It will have maybe better defenses sometimes for the group, because we didn't mention the prismatic barrier. That's pretty big. I was doing some research for this. I was wrong, and I told you that it's 15% magic damage reduction, but it's not. It's 25.
25. Oh yeah. Well, that's a huge relief for again, healers and the group generally. I mean, okay, not only speaking from a healer point of view, but it's definitely much more added value from an Arcane Mage because it's for the whole group as opposed to, you know, okay, Fire Mage does have cheat death, fine, but I feel the value is much more impactful when you have that utility for the whole group. So
let's just say mages don't need cheat death to be tanky. They have quite a few defensives.
Yeah, well, the good ones. I guess like we can go ahead and talk about like the general stuff for mages because okay, Fire, Arcane, they're both S tier specs right now. Obviously, Arcane is played much more. We know, I mean, hopefully we made it clear on to why, but it's also the fact that the mage class specifically brings a lot of stuff. I think like you mentioned, like it's possibly the tankiest DPS in multiple occasions. Yeah, because ice cold, ice block, you know, the what is it, 70% damage reduction?
Yeah, so you can get ice block to be immune, which nobody does anymore, or you can get ice cloth for 70% damage reduction. That's like the biggest flat damage reduction in the game.
Yeah, there's also the greater invisibility as well, the mass barrier, the mirror image, the alter time. So they have a lot of tools to survive, which is great. I'm not going to talk about healer POV, but it's great to have that. Not to mention like the utility, man. I mean, fuck it, you need that intellect, regardless. Yeah. I mean, even if you have like, I don't know, a hybrid comp, let's say, you don't have all mages and wizards, and you have like Windwalker Monk, for example, random example out there, right? I'm gonna still need that intellect as a priest, okay? That's still value there.
I think Arcane Intellect was the first raid buff to be nerfed because it was so good for casters and healers as well. And it's not like now it's useless. It's still really good. It's the only real buff that specifically buffs healers throughput outside of, I think, Mark of the Wild.
And healers love it. Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
But they do.
You have to also think about this season and, you know, the fact that mages bring a lot to the table to help out, right? This, you know, obviously the curse, like you can think about Theater of Pain, you know, mages are blessing in that dungeon. And plus a lot of like disrupts in CC, right? The roots.
Gravity, which Dragon Breath can now be Gravity Lapse, which knocks things up, and
that's why they keep popping up.
It's that and Shamans, and this is really good because I bet a lot of you guys as well end up in compositions with a lot of people that just have AoE stuns, and things just get DR'd.
DR so fast.
Like in Theater of Pain, when we pull that big corridor and we want to stop all those casts, and if your group is like half or not coordinated at all, everybody just throws their shit really quick, and then I do my stun, and everybody's immune. It's like
then you have like a mage who can save the day through those knockups. So it's really, really good. But I guess at the end of the day, if we are going to compare Fire and Arcane, obviously each spec has its own personal shiny avenues. Yeah, I still think at this point it's a matter of preference and playstyle because
they're very different. Yeah,
they're very different, but they sort of accomplish. You know, if you're gonna bring a spec like this, any of them, they're gonna accomplish what they're gonna set out to do if they know what they're doing. Obviously, Fire Mage is obviously much more mobile, much more explosive, a little simpler on the rotation side, so that might be your jam. Arcane, on the other hand, you have to get used to the fact you're just gonna be planted in the ground and always focus on a priority target. You know, you're not going to be the AoE master. You're going to do fine in small pools, but
you're going to be a little bit of a diva for your group. Everybody's like, let's let our Arcane do it.
Yeah. But the value you will bring to like boss fights and priority targets is going to be unmatched. Yeah. So it's not necessarily okay, what you're going to pick, but I guess, again, it's personal preference. If you want to be that guy who deals the massive AoE and also still have super good boss damage and priority damage, that's your Fire. If you want to be the boss melter and the priority melter with decent AoE in small packs, that's going to be Arcane. What do you think? Do you play Arcane or do you play Fire? Or maybe you play Frost? Let us know in the comments what you think, and if you do play them, let us know what your experience has been. And before you do that, check out this video where we talk about Feral Druid and why Feral Druid is an S tier spec. Finally, we love it.
Yes, not bait at all.
Click it!